Welcome to the JB Show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Today is Sunday, August 6, 2023. Good to see all of you. Come on in, have a seat. We're going to have a conversation today. There's a couple of topics that I want to get on today that's going to be very important for us to go over. Some news that I've come across that I feel that is very pertinent, especially to what we talk about here on Revolutionary Blackout Network, and things that are pertinent to me, because of who I am. So I just want to get into that. So just to let you guys know, the JB Show is every single Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can also find me on my channel, on the JB Font channel. And I also link that also in the description as well as in the chat if you guys would like to go ahead and give me a look there on my channel. Also, just to let you guys know, if you guys would like to, you guys can go to revolutionaryblackout.substack.com for email notifications, just like what you have gotten earlier for today. You guys got email notifications. If you guys would like to do that instead of relying on YouTube for those notifications, you can do that as well. Now, if you would like to, you can also become a patron on Patreon. You guys can just look us up at Revolutionary Blackout on Patreon, and you guys can become a patron if you guys would like to support the channel. In addition to that, we also have a GoFundMe as well as other routes if you would like to support the channel. Also, just want to give a shout out to Aaron, who is our graphics designer. Thank you so very much. If you would like to contribute to that so that we can make sure to pay our graphics designer what they would like to be paid, you guys can go to Venmo at Revolutionary Blackout, or you guys can go to Cash App $ Mutual Aid Forever. This is for our fundraiser for our graphics designer, Aaron. Thank you so very much. I'm also still taking applications for the Orlando chapter for the Revolutionary Blackout chapter. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also go to that as well. If you guys would like to, then I can send you guys the information for that as well. But yes, thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in today. Now, as for usual, I will go to the chat to say my hellos and salutations, and then we can get into the stories for today. First of all, we're going to come out and we're going to get to CBC voter. Happy Sunday at JB. Happy Sunday to you, CBC voter. Thank you so very much for being here every single time I go live. I ain't gonna lie, CBC voter, you help me in more ways than one. And thank you so very much for being such a strong supporter. And I thank you from the top and bottom of my heart for everything. So thank you so very much, CBC voter. Much love to you as well. Says Amanda Brinkley says, this is the problem with the system. It's completely broken. Too many people end up with post-traumatic stress disorder, and not enough people know what to do about them. When people say the system is broken, I understand exactly what you mean. I've switched my language a little bit. I think it's more of a semantics thing, but the system is designed this way. And because of it being designed this way, it is anti-human. It's inhumane. And so it is designed this way. It is a feature, not a bug. But I understand exactly what you mean. But I've come to put that in my mind that this system, it is made this way for the benefit of a small few. And that benefit of that small few, it is used to repress everybody else. So, but thank you so very much, Amanda. Very strong words, very solid points. Thank you. Miguel coming in with saying peace. Good to see you, Miguel. Serena says, greetings from Colorado, comrades. We'll try to keep up, but gotta stop at the dispensary. Smoke a little bit for me, you know what I'm saying? O'Shea Sibley is exactly why some of the left need to start taking LGBTQ issues seriously. We're dying out here. I'm going to get into that. We're going to talk about it. Thank you so very much, Serena, for chiming in. Good to see you, Miguel. All right. And then we have Eric says, as a teacher myself, I couldn't imagine if any of my LGBTQIA students were attacked, let alone murdered. Yep, we're going to get into that. Thank you so very much. Wesley coming in with a thumbs up. Thank you so very much, Wesley. The gentleman with the epic beard, by the way. I need some tips from you, Wesley. Seriously. Teacher brother. Zombie in the air says, JB chat saying hello to everybody. Give a hello, a wave to Zombie in the air. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Wadi coming in saying, hey everybody, good to see Wadi, always up in the chat, giving the support. Gotta love you, Wadi. You're a real one. See, Jeremy says, much love and solidarity to you, bro. Hope all is well. Thank you so very much from the Facebook side. Appreciate it so much. Wow, that means a lot, actually, because I need it. See, the Confederate Christian says Trump has did many amazing things to help the colored. You're a troll. Oh, gosh. I guess if you keep on going with this, I'll end up having to mute you in some time, shape, or form. But, you know, look, you might learn something by being here on this channel. So if I were you, I would just sit quietly and just listen. All right, we have Baba Yaga Forest Dweller. Afternoon, y'all. Good to see you, Baba Yaga Forest Dweller. I just love your name. It just rolls off the tongue. All right. Lisa P925. Peace and love. Thank you so very much. Roger Meadow says, Jay, you want to go to the Rock the Bells concert I went to yesterday? Watch for the videos. Salt and Pepper. Ooh. Brand Nubian, Big Daddy Kane, Run DMC, Latifah, MC Light, Money, Jungle Brothers, Rakim, and more. What? Oh, snap. Look, if I were to go, I would take my brother with me too. Because he's a hip-hop head. Like, he's a hip-hop, Eric B. and Rakim. He's Run DMC. He's Jay-Z, Nas, Pac. My brother is, and if you want to talk to him about stuff that happened in hip-hop, he's like you, Roger. He will school. He schools me, man. And I appreciate it because he talks, he knows a lot about, we're from Jersey, so that's right there. So he knows a bit. So good. Carrie Scott says, if we get U.S. citizen-owned utilities and resources, we can end poverty and fix reparations and stop paying for water. It's interesting that you bring that up, Carrie, and you bring this up a lot, which I appreciate. I want to add on to it. A lot of people don't realize that in Libya, before Gaddafi was murdered by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, And yes, I say that strongly because that's exactly what happened. But Muammar Gaddafi actually had free electricity for all within the country of Libya. And so, if Gaddafi was such a dictator, then why would he give free electricity to all of his citizens? Yeah. And if he could do it there, we can do it here. But it's a choice not to because, well, they really don't care about the citizens here. Muammar Gaddafi cared way more about Libyans than any president ever cared about Americans in the United States. Let's just be real about it. We got to call the thing a thing, baby. All right. Who else? Purple Philosophy says, sorry, I had to get on my Facebook. It's all good. Either way, it's all good. All right. All right. Let me see. Who else I didn't get to say hello to? Let me see. Oh, yeah. Christopher says, not the 14.88. Yikes. Full on Nazi troll. Yeah, they're going to come in here because they hate black people. But maybe, just maybe, they'll learn a thing or two. Maybe they'll come for me bashing Democrats, and then they'll stay and then lose the Nazi ideology. And then maybe they'll, actually realize who their true enemies are. But if they're not, then, well, they can take it whatever they want. They can go somewhere. All right. Ryan Wagner's in the chat saying, morning, JB, and all in chat. So good to see you. Wesley says, beard secret, grow old and only shave twice a year. Thank you. I'm getting my grays in. I am not going to color those grays in. I'm keeping them for sure. I'm keeping them grays. Jersey, yes, red and meth was there. Oh yeah. Also, how high? I've never seen that movie. I should give it a look. But yeah, Redman's from Brick City. Yeah. Wu-Tang forever. All right, let me check on the Rockfin side to see if anybody's watching. We have a few people on the Rockfin side, and I'm sure we got a few people on the Rumble side. Good to see all of you. So what are we talking about this afternoon? It's going to be a doozy. We're going to be talking about kids tortured in Louisiana prison. And then we're going to be touching on O'Shea Sibley murdered. So we're going to be talking about these two important topics. Let's get into it. So I got to take a drink for this one. I should have got me some alcohol for this subject because this subject is depressing. But we got to talk about it. Kids are being tortured. Let me show you guys something. Kids are being tortured. And it's primarily ones that look like me. And you guys know how we feel at Revolutionary Blackout about the carceral system. How really it should be abolished because most people who are incarcerated are deserving of restorative justice. Really, everybody is worthy of restorative justice. And after seeing this story, it smacked me in the face. So I'm going to show you guys the article first. Oh boy. All right, so this is out of the appeal. Let me see. So it says 133 degrees and no AC. Kids at Angola prison kept in potentially deadly heat. So This is happening in this country. And the fact is that this should not be going on 100 at all. And let's just get into it. With heat indexes in the area regularly hitting triple digits, children, children, children incarcerated at Louisiana's Angola prison have been locked in windowless cells for nearly 24 hours a day. One medical expert says the conditions put lives at risk. Let me enlarge this just a little bit so you guys can see it a little bit better. All right. There's children incarcerated on the former death row unit of Louisiana's Angola prison were locked in their cells without air conditioning for several days this month amid scorching summer temperatures, according to a teenager held at the facility. The child, identified by the pseudonym Charles C., said in a statement to his attorney that the kids were only let out of their cells for an 8-minute shower, which they had to take while handcuffed with their ankles shackled. On Monday night, the American Civil Liberties Union and other legal groups submitted statements from young people held at Angola to the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Louisiana. The plaintiffs asked the court to order state officials to immediately move all kids out of the unit and to cease transfers into the unit. With heat indexes in the surrounding area reaching as high as 133 degrees this month, a medical expert for the plaintiffs warned the court that the conditions could be fatal. Dr. Susie Asalo said, "I would not dare to keep my dog in these conditions for fear of my dog dying." This is a medical expert for the plaintiffs. It has been dangerously hot in Angola so far this summer, confining children for all or most of the day to concrete and cement buildings without air conditioning is too foolhardily and perilous. You know, it's interesting. You get a lot of people who say, we got to protect the kids. We got to protect our kids. What about them? What about the news stories about police officers sexually assaulting teenage boys while stopping and frisking them? But they look like me, so it doesn't matter. Confining them to solitary confinement and putting them in cinder block ovens. That's torture. I'm going to read the rest of the article, but I just want to share with you guys why I can so confidently say that is torture. Solitary confinement is a human rights violation. The United Nations Committee Against Torture cited the excessive use of solitary confinement in the United States as a violation of the Convention Against Torture in 2014. Solitary confinement is torture. It should not be done to anyone. And yet, in this country, we're even doing it to children. This system, it is not, things like this are not a bug, it is a feature of the system. Let me share it with you guys, and I'll go over more of the gory details, but This is what's happening in Louisiana. By the way, this prison is also called the Alcatraz of the South.
In one of the most infamous prisons in the country.
We pray that you touch the hearts of these people to not send these kids to Angola and to try to help these kids so they can have a better life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
We're in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at the state capitol with an organization called Family and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children. And they're about to crash a governor's meeting to voice their concerns about kids in Angola prison. Louisiana is home to one of the nation's most notorious juvenile justice systems. After a series of high-profile escapes, suicides, and acts of violence in youth facilities, Governor John Bel Edwards announced plans to move several children to Angola, a maximum security prison for adults.
First of all, by the way, I love when Black women say it because it has such a great ring to it. First of all, it rolls off the tongue better for them than it does for me. But anyways, question by Bill Bradley. Great question. Why are minors being held in a maximum security facility? What is wrong with people in this nation? It's an adult prison. They segregate out the minors, but why are minors there in the first place? Exactly. My question is, why in the hell would we put kids in a maximum security prison? Why are they there in the first place? They're kids. Does that make any sense to anybody? Let's continue.
Excuse me, can I ask Governor? Can I ask you a question? He's going around the other way. I mean, we wanted to meet with the governor's office and he went out the back door.
The state says the move is about keeping children.
By the way, the governor is a Democrat. So just so anybody realizes, the Democrats and Republicans are all one party. And if they're willing to do this to our youth, they're no better. Remember, Joe Biden wrote the 94 crime bill, a Democrat. Let's continue.
Children safe. But the protesters believe it's just the latest example of a system more geared towards punishing children than helping them.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No peace in Angola! No kids in Angola! No kids in Angola! Whose kids? Our kids! Whose kids? Our kids! Whose kids? Our kids!
Every young person that lives in Louisiana knows that this is the worst place ever.
Gina Womack runs Families and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children.
The governor stated that this was going to be a temporary transitional unit until they could stabilize the other facilities, and it was in the best interest of these young people who were supposedly wreaking havoc on some of the other young people, and it was a way to keep them safe and the other youth safe.
Now, as I understand, Angola was built for some of the toughest, hardened, grown criminals. The governor is saying that they're now going to house young teenagers there.
They are housing, and they are in a death row facility.
Louisiana has a long track record of treating juvenile offenders like adults. Even before the decision to move children to Angola, the state regularly subjected them to solitary confinement and ignored reports of abuse from officers at juvenile facilities.
Remember, everybody, solitary confinement is torture. Remember, every single time I want you guys to, in your minds, whenever you hear solitary confinement or they'll try to call it by another name. But when they house kids in a facility and keep them separate for hours and hours on end without human contact, that's solitary confinement. No matter what they say, the process is still the same, right? If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then guess what? It's a duck. So guess what? It's solitary confinement. And every single time you hear the word solitary confinement, I want you to remember the word torture. That's what it is. Torture. So when they say they're putting kids in solitary confinement, just put in your mind, I want you to remember this. They're torturing our kids. They're torturing our kids. Keep that in mind whenever you hear this. This is what the state is doing. Let's keep going.
The juvenile justice system, the way it was designed, is supposed to be to help these kids. It's supposed to be like a social welfare kind of setup. It's not supposed to be punishment, because the law recognizes that a kid is different. And if a kid does something wrong, the kid needs help, not punishment.
Beth Schwartzapfel has covered the Louisiana justice system for the Marshall Project, including revealing the experience of children held in solitary confinement.
Torture.
From the perspective of the juvenile offenders, like at this point, what are the conditions that they're forced to live in?
They were in these cinder block rooms there were these solid steel doors with a tiny slot where they would pass the food through, and they were held in there for 24 hours a day. What's wild is they had these light fixtures in the ceiling, and they had like sprinklers. The kids were so stir crazy and bored and frustrated that they took apart the light fixtures and the sprinklers, and they started using the pieces to dig holes in the wall so that they could climb through the cells to see one another and talk to one another. And
did you hear that? They're literally breaking apart pieces of the cell in order to just interact with each other. Humans are a social species. What happens when you cut a human off from contact? We can die. This is how important social contact amongst us is important. They're literally going through walls. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. Breaking through brick walls just to hang out and socialize. That's it. They're not even trying to get out of the prison. They're just trying to socialize. And you mean to tell me that that's not being tortured? That is torture. This is wicked, man. Wicked.
so that they could climb through the cells to see one another and talk to one another. And the state would come in, replace the light fixtures, the same thing would happen again. So then the state responded by removing the lights. And then the kids started taking their beds apart and using the pieces from their bed to dig holes. And so they took away the beds. So for some of these kids, it was like literally a mattress on a concrete floor in the dark. So,
Right.
You know, it's not like an adult serving a life sentence. Not that that makes it okay.
Right.
But, you know, there are going to be adults, grown adults, who are going to go into society.
And you're sending them from an environment which is just a black box.
It's damaging.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a black box literally and figuratively, right? You're damaging them. You are sending them out into the world with more problems than they came in.
I honestly do think that this is the intention. Putting them in there so that they're so problematic because of the trauma that they are inducing upon them, that it radicalizes them to be dangerous to society, so that when they get released, they can have a recidivism and bring them back. I think, honestly, this is intentional in order to keep the recidivism rates higher, so that they continuously come back over and over and over. And so then they also influence, so that they can keep them and influence others to keep coming back into the system. Why? Because we all know that the 13th Amendment did not fully abolish slavery. It keeps slavery within our carceral system. So then once they become adults and they're put in prison, they can become the new age slaves in our carceral system, which is being used by corporations in this country. It is a vicious cycle that this government, and by government I mean the entire United States, is doing against our kids. I want you to put that in your mind. Our kids, ours. These aren't some kids. These are our kids. This is our blood. This is our community. And I'm not just talking about black people, baby. I'm talking about everybody. Black people, white people, black kids are your kids too. Latinos, black kids are your kids too. Asians, black kids are your kids too. Just like white, Asian, black, disabled, queer, they're all my kids. Just like that, they're your kids too, because we're all part of one another. Every single one of us. Your kids are my kids and my kids are your kids, because ultimately we are all one. And so I want you to regain your sense of outrage while you're watching this, because this is what matters. Because if they're doing it to them, by extension, they're doing it to you. Let's continue.
Solitary confinement don't do nothing but like it make it deteriorate, especially if you a juvenile. Around that time, everything based off like influence and what you intaking. So however you gonna be or what you trying to transform into gonna be based off what you learning at that time. And if you in solitary confinement, you can't learn nothing but the way the bricks look around you.
Darren Dew and D'Angelo Davis both testified in April of 2022 at a hearing for HB 746, a bill inspired in part by Beth's reporting that would limit solitary confinement for children.
When you have brains developing, brains and hearts developing, and you put them in a torturous situation, you are breaking people. You're breaking those young minds. You're breaking them. You're harming them. And the state knows this. There are too many psychologists, child psychologists, that have already expressed this. They know this. It's not like, oh, I'm unaware. No, they're aware. And that's the more nefarious part of this, is that they are aware. It's on purpose.
How old were you when you got incarcerated?
14. I was 15.
14? 15? Tell me about the facilities and what it was like for you all to experience that.
The conditions of the buildings. It looked like they've been there for over 100 years. That's the worst thing ever, the living conditions. Mold in the shower and shit like that.
And rats and shit. Like, yeah, have a whole dorm, like, making a jokes out of rats being in the dorm. You become, like, adapted to that type of stuff. Like, you ain't around nothing but other males all day. So it's like buku aggression and testosterone in the dorm. So no matter how you look at it, you're going to be, like, kind of developing into what's around you.
Like, they took the years away that was supposed to teach us how to grow up and be a man and replaced it with straight violence.
What effect does...
You heard what he said? Let's go back. Because the thing is that you can teach young boys how to be men, but that doesn't mean that you teach them to be violent. But the system will force that upon them. Let's continue. Let's go back and hear what he said.
Like, they took the years away that was supposed to teach us how to grow up and be a man and replaced it with straight violence.
Like I said, they want them to be violent so that when they go back out, then they rearrest them again, put them back into the system, place them into a prison that does slave labor, so then they can have more slaves. And then this perpetuates the stereotype that black men are violent. And especially when you look at people like me, especially those of us who are darker skinned, our skin color is seen as a weapon. We're seen as inherently violent. And then they target young black boys constantly, all the time, because it is easier. And then society looks at us as violent already inherently. And because they do that, then guess what? There's less sympathy for us. And then it's because there's less sympathy, they don't really care if we're suffering. They don't even care about the torture. And this actually actively puts other racial groups' mind into the point where they start to accept the notion of us being enslaved again.
What effect does solitary confinement have on you as a person?
Man, solitary confinement made me, they're kind of like antisocial now. Like, I don't like people now. Like, man, I got major anxiety now. I had to get drunk when I go out there or something just to loosen up a little bit to enjoy myself. And it wasn't like that before jail.
So now he has to engage in substance abuse in order to just deal with society. That young man is damaged because the state damaged him. Instead of giving him empathy, they gave him malice. And they damaged him. They damaged his mind and his heart. Poor boy.
The bill limiting juvenile solitary was signed into law last June, but hope for any real reform was short-lived.
John Bel Edwards, a Democrat, y'all. A Democrat. Don't let nobody tell you anything different regarding the parties. They are one party. They don't care about us. A Democrat.
The planned transfer of young people to Angola was announced soon after. The Louisiana governor and Office of Juvenile Justice didn't respond to several requests for comment. So how did we go from this victory after your reporting to kids being locked up on former death row in Angola prison?
I think we got from A to B because, you know, you can make a law that says that you can't hold kids in solitary confinement for more than 24 hours at a time, right? Which is what the law says. That doesn't address any of the underlying issues, right? Like, why is the state holding kids in solitary confinement? Because these kids are seriously troubled and need a tremendous amount of help that the state does not have the resources to provide.
First of all, the state could have resources to provide, but the thing is that the state doesn't do it because the state doesn't want to. Because those resources are withheld because the resources go to the very wealthy instead of the people who actually need it. Ultimately, when you look at all these issues, it always goes down to class. Always, 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 it goes down to class. And that's the problem. And when people sit here and go, oh, well, they're just violent. They need, why are they, wait, hold up. Why were they violent in the first place? Ask that question. You see, the thing about the system is they always want to treat the symptoms and never the actual underlying cause. Could it possibly be that the underlying cause could be poverty, right? Some of these kids probably have parents that are working day in and day out just to survive, and they don't actually have their parents actively in their lives because their parents are too busy working just to keep a roof over their head. What about making sure they just have a roof over their head, irregardless? What about making sure they have food in their bellies, irregardless of money? Make sure they have health care, including mental health care. Resources that actually allow them to see counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists. But no, we don't have money for that. But you have money to give subsidies to fossil fuel companies. You have money to give tax breaks to these rich people who curb the tax system. You have money for that. You have money to send to Nazis in Ukraine. You have money to send to the apartheid state of Israel? $3 billion a year? You have money for that. But you don't got money for people who look like me. What? You don't have money to give universal health care. 6 million vacant homes in this country. We could literally house all the homeless. We could literally end poverty in this country today. So then kids won't have to worry about, things like this. They won't have to have PTSD. We can literally change the scope and the trajectory of this country, but the super rich won't get extra money.
That is still true.
The reason that's stated for sending juveniles to Angola prison is that it's a temporary solution for those who have been very disruptive and violent towards staff members.
How long though? Because if that's the case, solitary confinement is a temporary solution. You know what I'm saying? But they was abusing it. They always.
It should have never been used in the first place. So I'm going to move on a little bit. And this part is, God.
An author and lawyer whose work helped reduce life sentences for kids. Did a lot of work arguing before the Supreme Court that's been so impactful. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. We were really thrilled when the Supreme Court declared that mandatory life without parole sentences for all children are unconstitutional. And, we've been going around the country representing young people who had those sentences.
Yeah.
When I go places, there are now about 1,000 people who were told they were going to die in prison with life without parole, who have not only had their sentences reduced, but have been released. And one of the joys of my career is I go places and I meet people and they'll come up to me and say, hey man, I'm one of your guys. And to see them doing well and doing flourishing, it's just such a powerful statement about how wrong it was to ever say to some child that you're not fit. You're fit only to die in prison.
You probably don't know, but I'm one of your guys.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, I was sentenced to 27 and a third years to life.
Yeah.
And during my incarceration, I went from a GED to a master's degree.
Yeah.
So I was a fit candidate for parole.
Yeah.
But when I made it to the parole board, I was denied. So I filed a lawsuit using your case, stating that by denying me parole, it's tantamount to giving me life without parole. Did you ever intend that case having that kind of usage?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think part of what I've been interested in is just pushing back against this idea that became very popular in the 80s, where you had criminologists going around to legislatures arguing that some children aren't children, that some kids aren't kids. They look like kids and they talk like kids. But these folks argued that they weren't kids, and they came up with that term. They said these are, quote, super predators. And
does that sound familiar to you? Does that sound familiar to any of you? Hello, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hello, Joe Biden. Calling us super predators. Saying that even though we look, act, talk, and are the same age as kids, we're not kids. This has been a problem in the Black community for forever. That when you're Black, even when you're a child, you're seen as an adult because you're seen as threatening. This is why Tamir Rice was murdered, even though he was only 12 years old. They even considered him a man while he was playing with a toy gun, colorful toy gun, in a park. Yep. Sensei Reed looks like a fucking baby. Baby face. Still got murdered. So this is something that happens all the time. This is why when I look at like my nephews, I'm like, keep your nose clean. Don't stay out too late. I've had to have this talk with my nephews. Don't stay out too late. And be very careful about police. Because you may be 14, 15, 16 years old, but to them, you're a grown-ass man. And your skin is seen as a dangerous weapon. And this is something that happens to us all the time. And remember, this is due to Black people being listed as second-class citizens in this country. It always goes back to class. Remember that.
That demonizing label was used to create all of these horrific policies. It's been heartbreaking because that's where the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline was constructed, and fear and anger that was behind that rhetoric just caused us to look away. And I've always believed that all children are children, and you don't judge a society and its commitment to children by looking at how well it treats talented kids and gifted kids and privileged kids. A society's commitment to children has to be judged by how we're treating kids that have fallen down, kids that are struggling, kids that are poor, kids that have been abused, kids in detention facilities. I mean, I think generally the idea of just saying to someone, you should die in prison, is a flawed idea.
So yeah, I'm not going to play the entire video, but this was deep. And the thing is that this is what our kids are going through in this country. And just to put a finer point on this, let me share this also with you guys. It says the OJJ policy, which is what is it called again? I forgot. Office of Juvenile Justice. Sorry. It says the OJJ policy, Office of Juvenile Justice policy, states that children can be sent to Angola from other facilities for any number of reasons, including committing certain acts of violence against a staff member or possessing marijuana. It says even kids determined to have a serious mental illness or significant developmental disabilities can be transferred to a unit. This is how we treat kids with mental disabilities. So even if you're a kid and you have a mental disability, or an intellectual disability, this is how they treat them. Instead of using healthcare to treat them, they use punishment to treat them. And like I said, if they're going to do it to us, they're going to do it to you. So make sure to wise up. Charles C. was hospitalized at 10 years old and diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and ADHD, according to previous statements submitted to the court. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder after being shot at age 13 and has been hospitalized several times for mental health crises. That means that this is how we treat the disabled in this country. Living in poverty is also a source of PTSD among many of us. It's called a disease of despair. And some of us try to get out of it by doing illegal things in order to get out of that situation. That's the state of the human condition in this country. And even when we go by illegal means to get out of it, because it's made illegal or because we have never been given the resources in order to change our lives or to have our lives in a good base, then guess what? We end up violating the law just to survive. And then because we have to violate the law just to survive, well, then that's illegal. So therefore, we're put into the carceral system and subject to torture. We can't win for losing. We can't. It says, in addition to the unbearable heat, Charles reported that a staff member had thrown him against the wall, which made him bleed. He said he'd been denied access to educational programs and is often hungry because he doesn't have enough food. Charles says, I am close to getting my HISET high school diploma, and it makes me sad I can't earn it. They keep promising that they'll give me education, but won't. When Utter met with Charles at Angola earlier this month, Utter told the Appeal that the teenager appeared exhausted. Though the room was air-conditioned, unlike the cells, Utter said it was still uncomfortably hot. Charles told him that the heat made it difficult to sleep. He literally had his head down on his knees almost the entire time we spoke. It was very difficult for him to communicate because he was so tired. After the visit, Utter said he returned to his car and saw that the temperature outside had reached nearly 100 degrees. They have a fan and are supposed to give us ice and water, but only provide it about half the time. I am often thirsty. When the power goes out, we don't even have the fan. The day before Utter's visit, Charles reported that staffers had let him and other kids out for 2 hours of recreation, during which the time they were handcuffed and their ankles shackled. No ball is provided, so we just sit there. Another teenager at the facility, identified by the pseudonym Daniel D., said that in his statement to the court that when he arrived at Angola, he was locked alone in his cell for 3 days and not allowed out except to shower. Since then, he's been confined to his cell every day from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. Like Charles, he reported that there was no air conditioning in his housing unit and that they don't even have working fans when the power goes out. He said that the food is so atrocious that at one point he only ate 3 meals in 10 days. He buys items from the commissary to sustain himself. By the way, just so that anybody realizes, if you've had family that was incarcerated, do you know how expensive it is to keep money on their books so they can get food from the commissary? Do you know how expensive that is? Especially to many families like mine who are poor or working poor, who can't afford to really put money on people's books all the time. So they're subject to either having to eat unedible food or nothing at all. So guess what? They starve. It is not unusual to see somebody go into incarceration, chubby like me, and then come out like a stick because they can't eat properly. They don't have proper nutrition in there. Anybody who knows anybody's been incarcerated, I knew a few. Just to even communicate with them on the phone is expensive because they charge you to call to the jail or prison. Trust me, I have family members that have to go through that. I know. Having to put $25, $30, $40, $50 just for the phone calls for the month. And then you only get maybe about 4 or 5 calls out of it. Yes, I understand how this rolls. I know how this goes. So there's a petition that's going around to stop this torturous practice in Louisiana. And I want to share this petition. And if you guys have not, please circulate this video, share it on social media, like the stream if you guys have not already, so that this can get pushed out into the algorithm. This is the petition. It says, kids don't belong in America's worst prison. We should not have children in prisons, period. We shouldn't really have people in these prisons, to be honest with you, because this is a crime against humanity. Right now, it's over 3,000 signatures. What's needed is 4,000. Share this and sign it and share, please, if you can, because this does not need to be. This should not be happening in the richest country in the history of the world, because this is sick, right? So please share. Kids do not belong in these prisons, period. End of story. It should not be happening. And anybody who says otherwise, they are making an excuse for torture. You are making an excuse. And by the way, let this shit happen to a little white kid. I'm sorry that way, but let this happen to a little white kid, and there will be outrage. I'm sure it does happen to some little white kids. I'm sure it does. This should not be happening. And this is happening on purpose. Do not let anybody manipulate you into thinking, oh, well, they did the crime. They should do the time, blah, 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 blah. No. Solitary confinement is a human rights violation. The United Nations Committee Against Torture cited the excessive use of solitary confinement in the United States as a violation of the Conventions Against Torture in 2014. They should not be held like that, and they should not even be put into a maximum security prison because they are little kids. So, please make sure to like the stream and share it far and wide so that people are no longer subject to this type of treatment. That's why I put in the title, Tortured in America, because it is literal torture. And then on top of being in solitary confinement, on top of all that, they're also subject to being cooked in a concrete oven. $133 degrees? That was the temperature in Death Valley. What was it, 2 weeks ago? It reached record temperatures of 133 degrees. A human can die at 120. Humans die at that temperature. You're killing them. That's murder. It's horrible. It's just horrible. Please share. All right, let me go to the chat really quick. I know you guys got a lot to say. All right. Yeah, Zombie in there. This is very depressing, but the thing is that these things need to be talked about, you know, because people really need to find out what's happening. Captain Obvious says treating your mental illness is not the priority in jail and prison. The priority is to kill your brain so you're not a threat to staff. I hate that you're right. Baba Yaga says adults should only be in prison, not kids. To be honest with you, I say even adults deserve, they deserve to have restorative justice. They don't do adults like this in a lot of other prisons all over the world. Whoever says it's insane how terrible everyone with a mental illness is treated, Captain, and it has to be exponentially worse in prison. Wesley says, too bad the UN has zero power to hold anyone accountable. That's also true. This is why it's up to us to change the system. Unemployed Scholar says the U.S. has never followed international law. This is why we have to change the system, because we have to save it. In order to save our kids, we have to change the system from the ground up. Joey Nichols says literally the people that are putting them in prison should be the ones in prison. Ryan Wagner says schizophrenia could be derived from MK Ultra and adjacent to covert testing programs on U.S. citizens. Just speculating, but the lack of identifiable cause gives me Havana syndrome vibes. Methodical Madness says not to mention the sexual assaults. Happens in there too. Good point, Bill Bradley. International law is an invention of the U.S. meant to legitimize our punishments of other nations. Rules for thee, but not for me. Very good point, Bill Bradley. Ooh, that's a name. Kapapamachakewo says human rights are precarious as long as prisons exist. Namor 7 says the most depressing aspect is the lack of public outrage that this issue should generate. I honestly think that this should be international news. This I don't understand why this is not international news, but it should be. Graham Jones says, I feel so left out because I'm not a leftist. This war on the poor and it's sick breaks my heart every day. I mean, you shouldn't feel left out. In fact, this is a class issue. That's the thing what the left focuses on. This is a class issue. It's not a left or right issue. It's a class issue. So don't feel left out. I think the best answer for this is to talk about these issues and express your outrage and share it with others. Lawless District says prisons are modern day plantations. Exactly. In fact, that prison is actually built on a plantation. So it really never changed its purpose. Let me see. Yes. Steakman Mark says USA is the world's largest prison population. Yes. We have 5% of the world's population, but we have over 25% of the world's prison population in the United States. Let me go to Rockfin. Pop it out. Do this. Gene Whitworth says, so effing sick of crazy Fs sitting in ivory towers and abusing children. Evil cultist Fs. Says, yeah, I put him in prison for smoking pot, where the prison professional criminals would teach them how to steal it as well. It did happen to my white nephew. They effed him up with drugs. Now he's practically a vegetable. So no, like you said, it's about class, not race. They did this to him. They don't ever make it right, even with whites. Yeah, the thing is that they did it to us, so they're going to do it with you. And so ultimately, Black people are second-class citizens, but they're working to make white people second-class citizens as well. This is why it's so important for us to have a coalition together in order to stop this system, because Black people are the canary in the coal mine. This is why you have to throw these things away, like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, misogyny, misogynoir, all these different things. We have to throw these things away out of our minds, and we have to come together, because the thing is that they're doing to us, they're going to do it to you. And that's why this is so important. Let me check. Let me see. All right. We're good on the Rumble side. Okay. So I'm going to talk about this next subject. And this is a news story that came out about a week and a half ago. This one hurts, man. This one really hurts. Oh boy. I'm going to share this article really quick. Let's see. Let me take that down. Take that down. All right. So I am going to share this video so that you guys get the full picture. So, oh, hang on. So next one I'm going to be talking about is O'Shea. Oh, before I do that, make sure to like the stream and share. Also, if you guys have not already, if you guys would like to, you guys can also help us out with our fundraiser for our graphics designer, Erin. She does amazing work. You guys go to Venmo at Revolutionary Blackout, Cash App, $ Mutual Aid Forever. And if you guys would like to, you guys can also support the channel by contributing to or becoming a patron on our Patreon. So thank you so very much. Now, O'Shea Sibley murdered. O'Shea Sibley was a dancer. And like me, he was black and gay. But he was murdered because he was gay in New York. Those of you who are from New York probably have already heard this story. Some people probably have not. I'm going to share my screen, and this is going to be tough to watch, but I'm going to give you guys a viewer discretion advised now because this is going to be tough. But we have to talk about this. O'Shea Sibley was a 28-year-old dancer, and he was killed by a teenager. Let's go.
This professional dancer was stabbed by a teen shouting homophobic slurs.
They murdered him because he was gay. Because he stood up for his friends.
On the night of July 29th, 28-year-old O'Shea Sibley and his friends were voguing while pumping gas at a Brooklyn gas station when a group of men told them to stop dancing while screaming homophobic slurs. Witnesses say Sibley was trying to diffuse tensions between the two groups when things quickly escalated.
And he was just saying, we may be gay and we listen to our music, but it's no hate. It's all love. And you stabbed him. You stabbed my brother.
CCTV footage shows the assailant then fled the scene in a black SUV. Sibley was rushed to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead.
Just pumping gas and listening to Renaissance and just having a good time. That killed O'Shea.
As of August 1st, police are still searching for the 17-year-old suspect who may face murder and hate crime charges. According to police, witnesses said there may have been a religious motive to the slaying. This professional...
So if anybody knows, voguing is basically a dance that's done. It started off in the ballroom, underground ballroom scene back in the 80s, especially among gay and trans culture. And O'Shea and his friends were just dancing to Beyonce music at a gas station. And that prompted these young men really a boy, to get into an altercation with them because they didn't like that they were doing a dance that's associated with gay culture. And they were gay. And they murdered O'Shea Sibley. He stabbed him to death. So this happens in, our nation, and let's get more details. So it says, man fatally stabbed in confrontation as he danced at a gas station. O'Shea Sibley was at a Brooklyn gas station with friends late Saturday night, filling up a car and blasting music by Beyonce, when a group of men approached him and told him to stop dancing, according to friends. The man began using slurs, and Mr. Sibley, 28, a gay man who was a professional dancer and choreographer, confronted them. According to his friends and a video of the altercation, the argument escalated, and one man, actually a 17-year-old boy, stabbed Mr. Sibley. According to the police, Otis Pena, one of Mr. Sibley's best friends, pressed on his wound to stop the bleeding before he was taken to a Maimonides medical center before he was pronounced dead. No arrests have been made by Monday, but the police said that the hate crimes unit was involved in the investigation. The Anti-Defamation League also ruled it as a hate crime. There was an update on the story, and in fact, the young man, the teenager that killed O'Shea, had turned himself in. It says the 17-year-old who police believe is responsible for the stabbing death of the 28-year-old professional dancer at a Brooklyn gas station last weekend has turned himself in. The teenager turned himself in with his attorney and now is in police custody. O'Shea Sibley was dancing and voguing. Let me see here. It says Sibley was a professional dancer, and he also performed at New York City's renowned Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. When it comes to what happened to O'Shea, I'm going to get a lot of people who are going to go, this is a social issue. Why are you talking about this? One thing I think that people need to realize is that social issues are also class issues. Let's go. Why were black people brought here to the United States as slaves? Were we brought here because we were black, or were we brought here because they wanted free labor in order to cultivate the land so that they can make money off of it without having to pay any type of labor? The answer is B. And so in order to have a differentiation between us and the white indentured servants, the biggest identifying factor was skin color. So then that class issue birthed racism. Because back in the day, if you were a British person, you differentiated between Scots, Germans, Irish, Italian. There was no white. There wasn't. And so the biggest demarcation was, oh, we're brown or black, and they are white. So ultimately, it turned into a race issue. So people with my skin color were considered second-class citizens. It always goes back to class. If you are not cisgender, white, male, heterosexual, you are subject to a lower class. And what happens is they will use you being part of a disenfranchised group as a means to divide the working class so that we don't come together and actually look at who is actually oppressing us. And so because of that, that's used to make people look at people who are like me as the enemy, when in reality, The real oppressors are the people who are at the top. So these different types of prejudices, these different types of bigotry are used as a tool in order to keep them in power and the rest of us lower. So ultimately, it is a class issue. And they use that bigotry, and they instill it into the minds of young people, like the person who murdered O'Shea. And then they murder O'Shea. And this was based on religious reasons, because apparently the young man was Muslim. And there's no difference between that young man and some people who call themselves Christian in this nation, who do the exact same thing or would do the exact same thing, or who don a assault rifle and run up into a church or into a shopping center to kill people, or who would run up into a club and shoot people down. So they'll use religious fanaticism as a way to also keep us divided, so that we don't end up looking at the people who are really the corporate dictators of this nation, so that we don't come together as a coalition to change the foundations of the system. So that's the problem. And there are many people who are victims of these consequences. Now you can say, well, yeah, there are some gay people who are higher up in the system who have billions of dollars and things like that. It doesn't matter. There are black people who are billionaires too. Just because they have some of our identities doesn't mean they're less of an exploitative person. They're less of an oppressor. Okay, they allowed some people of disenfranchised group to join their ranks. Yeah, okay, fine. But the thing is that the point is there's still this small group of people who are oppressing and exploiting everybody else. So ultimately, when it comes to this issue, it's not just an identity issue, it's also a class issue. And I want to say something to my fellow black people, because you'll have black people that'll go, and I black people, family, y'all really need to wise up to this. When we talk about LGBTQ issues, it is not to separate from black issues. Recognize that we are still black at the end of the day, and we are still part of the community. So when we talk about black LGBTQ issues, if I talk about LGBTQ issues as a black person, and you start complaining about it, are you going to keep that same energy when a black woman starts talking about women's issues as a black woman? No, you wouldn't dare, right? Because that's also part of her identity. This is also part of our identity, while being black. See, it's a little thing called intersectionality that you need to learn. And this is a blind spot that the black community really needs to work on. Because some of y'all will go ape shit over black trans women, when in reality, they're coming for all of us. And it behooves us to build solidarity with one another in order so that we can actually fight for our liberation. To put a finer point on it, let me share this with y'all. This gentleman said something very salient in my view, and I appreciate this. And I shared this on Twitter. Didn't get that much traction, but it's whatever. But listen to this.
But when we don't fight for all Black liberation, we are literally working in the lane of white supremacy. Because in order for all Black people to be liberated, you got to be fighting for all Black people to be liberated. We are handed a white hood, a KKK hood from the time that we are born, because we are trained to hate ourselves. We are trained to hate our hair. We're trained to hate our lips. We're trained to hate our nose. We train to hate ourselves. And so we have to constantly do that work to undo that hood, to take that hood off of ourselves. So when we say we fighting for Black liberation and Black folks' freedom, we got to fight for Black folks who are queer, who are trans, who are gay, who are straight, who are drag queens, who are not. Because it's like, really, if you Black, baby, we got to go to the keep our eyes on the prize, because that's exactly what Willie Lynch wanted. When Willie Lynch wrote that letter and had them white people hang us and divide us, that is division. So when we're not supporting all Black liberation, it is white supremacy. But
ultimately, it's not only a division of race that these people use, and by these people, I mean the corporate dictators. They'll also divide us among other different lines, even within our own race. Stop being a tool used by them. You're being used by white supremacists, by capitalists, to keep us divided so that we don't liberate ourselves. And when you go along these lines, guess what? You're also dividing the working class. Do not let yourself be used by these Harlan Crows, these Elon Musks, these George Soroses, these Charles Kochs. Do not let yourself be used by them. Unfortunately, some of us allow it. That's a blind side that we need to start looking. This is why it's a class issue. And I say, listen to those of us who are in these marginalized positions. So there's a lot of outpouring of what happened with O'Shea Sibley. There's a lot of people who are gathering and basically expressing their love and condolences regarding O'Shea Sibley. So you have crowds that went to the gas station where he was murdered. This is the crowd that went out there. Let's go. So they're all out there celebrating his life. They're saying his name, O'Shea. Oops. So that's important because, you know, nobody's free until we're all free. And that's what's important. We can't celebrate our freedom unless we're all free. And I think that's the point. Freedom for all. Okay. So, justice for O'Shea. All right, I'm going to head to the comments and the chat really quick. I'm going to go to Rockman first. Let me see. Gene Whitworth says you need to stop looking in terms of what's fair to blacks only. Reparations to start with working poor, which is not mistaken, is heavily proportional to people of color. Respond to what is not what we wish it to be. Black people are still second-class citizens. Black, white privilege still exists in this country. So sorry, Gene, but yeah, I mean, your likelihood of being oppressed is actually a little bit less than mine, simply just because the color of your skin. And yes, they did genocide along with Native Americans, but the thing is that part of that is because of their skin color and phenotype being different than white people. And no, talking about race is not a distraction. The thing is that first of all, I hate to say this, Gene, but you're literally on a black socialist network saying that speaking about race is a distraction. I'm sorry, but the thing is that who created this distraction? It wasn't us. And talking about the problem that was created by the system is important. And people need to realize that they have to take these thoughts, these prejudices, and throw them away for the good of everybody. And we need to talk about it often so that people realize that maybe, just maybe, they've been conditioned to think a certain way about people who look like me. That's work that they need to work on, even people on the left. So yeah, I'm going to keep talking about it. Nick, Rome, CJ, Sabby, all of us are going to keep talking about it because it matters that much. And that's all I got to say. But thank you for your comments. Checking on the Rumble side, nobody there. Namor says those who disseminate ideologies of hate are the first to refrain accountability, especially those who internalize it express in the most heinous and lethal ways. That's also very true. Christian says O'Shea dances on forever in our struggle. Ryan Wagner says, my grandma's German Norwegian family considered my Italian grandpa and their children to be mixed race, not white. Yeah, back then it wasn't. But then white people, they're now considered white. Just interesting how it bleeds over into race. Vanessa says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable mutuality, tied in a single moment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Thank you. That's also a really good point by MLK. Unemployed Scholar says the imprisonment and torture of Black kids and all Black people is an ongoing genocide. Bill Bailey says gatekeeping people's issues is never a good strategy. We all have to engage with the issues other people find important. We have to help people with their issues so that they'll help us with ours. Yeah. Lawless District says, unless you're white, you don't have the privilege of pretending like race is not an ongoing issue. I wish I had that privilege sometimes, but I don't. But even if I did have that privilege, would I want to express it? Would I want to embrace it? Because if I realize that everybody's a part of me and I'm a part of everybody, it would actually behoove me in order to, hold that issue as my own and continuously fight against it. Because ultimately, we're all connected. Thank you so much for the super chat. Purple Philosophy says, JB, do you have time to share your thoughts on the Mississippi officers if I send you a link? I don't know anything about that story. I might have like 5 or 6 minutes, but because I have to get going soon because I actually have a live reading I'll be doing on my channel at 4 p.m. But if you can send it to me very quickly, then that's fine. Let me put my email up so you guys can have that. Let me see. All right. So that's my email. If you guys want to send it, if you want to send that to me, so that, yeah, wasn't planning on that, but I got a couple minutes. But I'm trying to make sure I'm done in the allotted time because I don't want to run over. But thank you so much. Captain Obvious says, in my understanding, race is, yes, a social construct, a colonial construct, but it appears to be one that forms around a shared history and shared experiences. Yes, it is, but at the same time, it was created as a class issue. So that's the important part. It wasn't created just as a differentiation between people. It was a means to create a differentiation between classes. So that's how it was originally put. So when I talk about being Black, I'm also talking about being second class. See what I mean? And so even including with that, it means being, it's also, that's why it's also a class issue. Thank you, Bill. Bill, can we switch brains? That he said it better than I could. He said race is used as a de facto caste system in Western society. This is it. Basically, Bill, if you have a microphone, you just dropped it. Thank you. But that's basically what it is. It's a caste system. And it has not went away. And the only way to get rid of it is to change the system in its entirety. Love you back, bro. So that's why when I talk about other identifiers like sexual orientation, disability, gender, national origin, these are also part of caste systems as well. And they are used by the corporate dictators to keep us divided so that we don't end up rising up. And this is why some of this bigotry that is instilled into our head by society is important to cast these things aside so then we can actually unite together and actually change the system from the ground up. That's why it's so important. This is why I talk about these things. Yes, Jesse. Yes. Everything is intertwined in class. And this is why it's important to listen to people of marginalized communities, because if you do, then you get to learn how it affects us. Did you send Purple Philosophy? Did you send that to my email? I'm looking at it right now. Checking right now. Please don't tell me it went to my junk. Oh, sorry, that didn't sound right. Went to the drunk emails. No, I haven't got anything yet. But it's okay. Maybe I can talk about it another day. Maybe I can talk about it on my channel. But yeah. Because I got to get going. That's the only thing. Yep. Creative Experiment says it took me 10 years to learn about class and labor theory of value. Lots of brainwashing to undo. Okay. Captain Obvious says, but doesn't that mean that Black people should not identify as Black? How is that possible when being the descendant of a group known as Black people to continue to have real world implications? The thing is that ultimately, who identified us as Black in the first place? It was really the white wealthy landowners that did that. And so because of that, then yeah, we identify with it because we have to contend with the system day in and day out based on the classification that we were given. And we're constantly being oppressed against, more so than any other group, because of the way we look, because of our phenotype. And so it shouldn't be, but that's the way it is. Don't get me wrong, I agree that race is mostly a social construct, but how can you ask people to forget what their ancestors had to struggle to overcome? No, keep it in mind what our ancestors had to struggle to overcome. And yet, and the thing is that we still haven't overcome it. And that's the thing. We have to keep it in mind. In fact, I'll say not just us keep it in mind, but more people who are outside of our race to realize it and to fight up against it too. Ultimately, and I say this, with love, but white people really need to dive deep into this and realize that because they are benefiting from a system that was really put up against us, that they should be fighting to end that system because it is oppressive against us. It is oppressive against your Black brothers and sisters, yes. So, in fact, no, don't forget it. In fact, learn more. So, yeah. Anyway, so I got to get going. Let me check. Because I don't want to, because I have to rest a little bit before my stream on my channel. I'll be going live at 4 o'clock if you guys are not, because I know Sabby's not going to be live today. So I'll be live at 4 and I'll be doing a reading from my, from I think it's chapter 3, part 2 of Laziness Does Not Exist. So if you guys would like to join for that, I will be doing that. That's actually a really good chapter that I'll be getting into, especially regarding labor and work. So if you guys would like to, in fact, I'll put the link in the chat really quick so you guys can join me for that as well. It's actually really good. Let's see. Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh. All right. All right. So if you guys would like to, you guys can join me for that. And did you guys like the stream yet? Go ahead and give the stream a like. If you guys have not, then you guys can go ahead and subscribe. If you guys would like to, you guys can also go to our website at revolutionaryblackouttnetwork.com so that you guys can be up to date on what we're doing over there as well. If you guys have any stories or emails that you guys would like to send us, you guys go to info@redblacknetwork.com. So info@redblacknetwork.com. And then if you guys would like to, you guys can join our mailing list at revolutionaryblackout.substack.com on our Substack so you guys can get email notifications so you guys will not miss any of our live streams or clips. All right. And then if you guys would like to, you guys can also subscribe to our Patreon or become a member. You guys can also do that as well. Also, thank you so much to Erin for her amazing work and doing the clips, as well as being our graphics designer. So if you guys would like to contribute, you guys can go to Venmo at Revolutionary Blackout or Cash App $ Mutual Aid Forever. All right. Roger Meadow says, I'm about to send you a rock. You ready or too late? You can go ahead and send it. I caught it. All right. Yep, got it. Let me wait. Did I pop this out? Let me pop it out again. Okay. All right. So let me share the screen really quick. Thank you for catching me already, Roger. All right. Okay. So Roger, thank you, Roger, for the tip. He says white supremacy was traumatized by Nat Turner rebellion. They wondered how in the world he was able to amass this many people to rebel against the system of slavery. Once they found out, which was through socializing with each other, there has always been an intent by the system controlled by whites to discourage breakup of blacks congregating. This is why they see us on a corner as a threat. They think we're plotting something against them, and it's not them, then the system that they benefit from. This has forced us to develop our own language within the English language, and every time they catch on to it, we change it up. We were saying jiggy until Will Smith coon ass made that corny ass song Getting Jiggy with It. We said we got to change up now. We are forced to be wary of them coming into our spaces, infiltrating to subvert. In this case, taking away shards of glass or pieces of bed to put the holes in the wall so that they can socialize. What is it that they are doing? What is it that they are planning? I fear they're coming for us, for the system that we benefit from. Yet a lot of times, we're not even thinking about them. I had an Uber customer who was convinced that when we are at family get-togethers, that we're talking about white people simply because he talks about other white people from different national origins. This was him trying to ease whatever guilty conscience he had left. They fear we're always plotting against him, which is an admission of them acknowledging their own complicity of their ancestors. When they do it to other groups, it's usually more scrutinized, such as white biker gang or something like that. I don't see them doing this to any other group. However, if the answer to that is to say, well, it happens to white folks, so then one must acknowledge that whites don't make up most of the prison population. Also, second story, I think all of us should think about taking classes on how to treat wounds. Maybe carry some vinyl gloves with you to make sure no blood gets in any part of your body, as well as take some CPR classes. JB, what you said about what brought us here was the motivation to bring us here, but we were brought here because we didn't have a viable defense force like the Chinese did against their advanced weaponry. Just something to think about. That's true. I do believe that there was a definite infiltration by the powers that be to use LGBTQ, Black, trans issues against Black Lives Matter to get us, instead of including that in the conversation of BLM, but instead get us away from talking about police accountability. I think that's what people from the community were concerned about. Thank you so much for that, Roger. Appreciate it. Oh man. But yeah, there's a lot to it. And I think that, we have to really come together, especially, Black people. We cannot allow ourselves to be divided by these other different types of identifiers. And then on top of that, all humanity should not allow ourselves to be divided by these identifiers. The people who are really the ones who are oppressing us along class lines, they don't want us to know. They don't want us to acknowledge it. But yes, so I got to get going. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. And yeah, I had to. I just got to be more careful when I go out of doors. And it's sad that I have to be careful to be myself, but I have to. So anyway, look, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Water your plants, water yourselves. Leave the world better than you found it. Also, think about the kids that are constantly put into incarceration. Please do not allow the sense of outrage to go out. And I hope we can truly get past the point where we can dance in public and not be vilified by other people because they decide to listen to the corporate dictators and telling them who their enemy is. Never let somebody tell you who your enemy is. Never let your oppressor tell you who your enemy is. Well, forehead kisses. Love you guys. Bye-bye.